I was the pitiful supporting male lead in a tropey, angsty novel destined for a miserable end. When the author went on hiatus, the system almost erased me, but a wealthy heiress pulled me into the real world, and the system even bent the rules for me with a promise. But her heart belonged to the main character. She eventually abandoned me and corrupted our son. Just as I was about to be deleted, the second female lead used her own good fortune to rescue me back into the fictional world, giving me a complete family. Then the system reappeared, demanding I bring them to the real world in exchange for saving my daughter's life. In that novel, I was the devoted but insignificant supporting character, fated for a tragic end. But then, I crossed over into the real world. It was all because of a wealthy heiress, a reader of the novel, who was left heartbroken by my bleak fate. She wished upon a star, hoping fate would grant her a devoted man, just like my character. And so, the system gave me the chance to win her heart. I was naive then, thinking my own leading lady had finally appeared, that we were destined for a happy ending. But her words were hollow, and in the end, she cast me aside like trash. Just as the system was about to erase me, the novel's other female lead, Hannah, stepped in and brought me back to our fictional world. We married, built a life, and had a daughter. It wasn't until many years later that the dormant real-world system spoke to me again. The moment the system's voice returned, my wife, Hannah, and I were comforting our daughter right after her chemotherapy session. Little Eva clutched Hannah's hand, her small face wrinkled in discomfort as she whimpered. I was about to soothe her, reaching for the bunny ears on her pink hat, when a familiar yet alien voice cut in. Mr. Fictional Character, long time no see. In this world, only one being ever called me that. It called itself the real-world system. It glanced at my pale daughter in the hospital bed and sighed softly. I really thought you'd have a good life after you returned. And to be honest, I did. My wife was kind and loving, my daughter sweet and adorable. The only tragedy was that my 5-year-old girl had been diagnosed with acute leukemia. The system cleared its throat, pulling my focus back to it. 6 years ago, that woman you failed to win over in the real world, Ava, she and your first child have crossed over into this world. They're looking for you everywhere. If you can convince them to return to the real world with you, the system will automatically cure your daughter's illness. Do you accept this mission? If it hadn't brought up that bizarre experience, I would have almost convinced myself it was all just a strange dream. I used to live inside a novel, the classic second male lead who loves the heroine but never gets the girl. The perfect backup boyfriend. Then the author abruptly stopped writing, throwing the world of the story into chaos. The other female lead, Hannah, gave up her pursuit of the hero and fell deeply in love with me instead. But I had fallen for a reader from the real world. I'd heard her voice from the real world, choking back tears as she said, "Ugh, what's so great about the hero? My character, James, is the best. He's rich, gentle, and so devoted. Who wouldn't fall for a man like that?" For countless nights, I watched her cry for me and laugh for me. I clearly remember the way her canines showed when she smiled while defending me. That was when the entity calling itself the real-world system bonded with me. With a dark sense of humor, it called me Mr. Fictional Character. The mission it gave me was to go to the real world and win that reader's heart. Her name was Ava. She lived in reality, but her situation was uncannily like the heroines in my book. Her fiancé, who was also her first love, had just abandoned her for his childhood sweetheart. And if I could make her fall for me, if I completed the mission, I could stay in the real world forever with a brand new identity, no longer just a soulless character in a book. Ava came from a powerful New York family, a true heiress. Her fiancé was also from a prominent, well-matched family. While her fiancé broke her heart again and again for his old flame, I stayed by her side. I never left, always trying to make her smile and creating little surprises. Slowly, she began to let her guard down. Then, after one particularly brutal heartbreak, she kissed me first, and I couldn't restrain myself any longer. From that one night, we had a child. I secretly planned a huge proposal party, wanting to surprise her, but she suddenly grew distant. She told me, "James, my parents will never approve of our marriage. If I tell them now, my father will force me to get an abortion. Can we just wait? Once the baby is born and they see him, they'll have to support us. Besides, you have nothing right now. You talk about marrying me, but can you really give me the kind of life I want? Later, Ava gave birth to a son. Her parents didn't yell at her, but their disdain for me grew even stronger, and they flatly refused to let her marry me. They even insisted that the child must take her family name, Harrison. His name was Paul Harrison. It was only later that I learned her unforgettable first love. Martin was also a Harrison. I came home from work early one day and caught the nanny viciously pinching his soft skin. I fired her on the spot. From that day forward, I decided to raise him myself. I left my company in the hands of my assistant and became a stay-at-home dad. I never truly grasped how many businesses and assets the richest man in Chicago controlled until then. Ava was his only daughter, and after our son was born, he spoiled her even more. He always made jokes at my expense, but he absolutely adored Paul. For Paul's second birthday, he gifted him 60% of the company's stock, with Ava managing it in trust. On Paul's 18th birthday, all of it would become his. When it was time for preschool, I was still agonizing over which school had the best environment. But he had already been accepted into an international academy named after him. The school was open to the public, but Paul thrived there like a fish in water. The day I went to pick him up, he made a little girl cry, and her parents confronted me immediately. Seeing Paul's defiant face, insisting he'd done nothing wrong, a flicker of anger ignited inside me. I had a sinking feeling he was becoming truly spoiled. It was the first time I dropped my gentle dad persona and sternly told him he couldn't bully others. In response, he kicked me in front of everyone and screamed, "This whole school is mine. I could do whatever I want. Who do you think you are to boss me around? Grandpa said our family wouldn't even want you if you tried to marry into it." Paul threw a fit and refused to go home with me, so their butler, Mr. Thompson, came to pick him up. When I tried to visit him later, the butler blocked me at the gate. I wasn't allowed to see him for a whole month. When I thought Paul had cooled down, I showed up with armfuls of gifts, ready to apologize for scolding him in public. But when I found him in the garden, he was being lifted high into the air by Martin Harrison. Ava stood nearby, smiling serenely as she watched them play together like a father and son. Paul giggled and then said something I'll never forget. "Daddy Martin," he chirped, "I wish you were my real dad. Grandpa says my other dad is useless and isn't good enough for Mommy. You're way better." I left the gifts right where I stood, didn't alert anyone, and just turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard Martin, still holding Paul, glance at Ava and say coolly, "But your mother already had you with someone else." A flicker of panic crossed Ava's face as she quickly grabbed his arm. "When Paul comes of age, he'll inherit all of my father's assets. That will be beneficial for you, too." Martin laughed, then looked down at Paul. "So, are you willing to get rid of your old dad?" Paul hesitated for a second before answering. "Yes. Grandpa says real men don't associate with losers. Everybody hates my dad, so I hate him too." Ava let out a soft, triumphant laugh. She said nothing, but her eyes were shining. In that moment, I finally understood. Ava loved the idea of a tragic hero from a story, but she could never let go of the powerful, real-life leading men who dominated her world. The ending was already written. It didn't matter which world I was in. The hero's spotlight always shines on the main character. And I was destined to be nothing more than the damn backup, no matter where I went. It was a complete and utter humiliation. I said, "Forget it. I'm done with this stupid mission." I resummoned the system and announced my decision. The system was silent for a long time before it finally replied. "Are you aware of the consequences?" Of course, I knew the consequences of quitting the mission. I would be completely erased, without a single trace left behind. I couldn't stay in the real world, and I couldn't go back to the world of the book. Here, I was a pathetic, cheated-on joke. There, I was just an empty, soulless shell. I was a nobody in both worlds, and nothing felt right. I exploded in anger. "Just do it. Erase me completely. Right now. Stop dragging your feet." The system replied coolly, "Sir, this powerless rage solves nothing. Fine, I admit it. I miscalculated on this one, it said. But their story hasn't reached its true conclusion. You still have a chance. Are you sure you want to give up now? As a character born from a novel, I knew better than anyone how powerful Hero's destiny is. It wasn't something a supporting character like me could ever hope to change, no matter how hard I tried. I'd rather quit now and keep my last shred of dignity than continue this self-inflicted humiliation. The system seemed to sense my thoughts and said it understood. For the next 2 days, I calmly waited to disappear, feeling surprisingly at peace. Then, at one point, the system's voice burst with excitement. You can return to your original world. I was stunned. But you said I couldn't go back. Correct. You couldn't, it said. But the other female lead from your book, Hannah, found out about your mission. When she heard you had failed and were about to be erased, she traded all of her future good fortune for a chance to bring you back. An image of Hannah instantly flooded my mind. The gentle, quiet woman who used to silently follow me around in our world. After the story's collapse, she, like me, had been living in a state of constant uncertainty. A sense of dread washed over me. I had to ask the system, so what's the price? It answered honestly, we don't know yet, but it's guaranteed to be something you won't find easy to accept. Since the deal is done, you have no right to refuse. You will be forcibly returned to your original world. I went back. Hannah was just as she'd always been, cautiously staying by my side, handing me the lunches she'd made herself. On instinct, I pulled her into my arms. We naturally started dating, then we got married and had a daughter. Then one day, our daughter fell ill, and the system reappeared. In that instant, I had a sickening suspicion of the true price Hannah had paid to pull me back from the brink of erasure. Seeing my hesitation, the system pressed on. I think you should take this mission. For your daughter. Besides, it seems your other son is having some trouble. His relationship with his mother isn't great. I didn't care about Paul's life, but if this mission could save my daughter, I had to. Neither Hannah nor I were a bone marrow match, and waiting for a donor could take years. Eva didn't have that kind of time. I'll do it, I said, but I have to tell my wife everything. Give me 1 day. The system agreed. Fine. See you tomorrow. I explained everything to Hannah from start to finish. She quickly grasped the situation and accepted the reality of the system's return. She smiled at me and said I had to complete the mission, that I had to bring our daughter back to her, whole and healthy. But the slight tremor in her hands betrayed her anxiety. She asked, half joking and half serious, James, you're not going to fall in love with her again, are you? You won't leave me and our daughter behind. A child's voice suddenly whined nearby. Mom, it's so hot. Why can't we just call Dad? How long are we going to wait like this? The system had transported me directly in front of the mother and son. I stood in the shadows, watching them bicker. How am I supposed to know your father's number? Ava snapped. Paul had grown much taller, though he still had some baby fat on his cheeks. I had to admit, he looked a lot like me. Hearing his mother's words, the spark of excitement in his eyes died. I sighed and stepped out of the shadows. Looking for me? The moment Paul saw me, his eyes lit up. He instinctively started to run and jump into my arms like he used to, but he was older now and caught himself. Instead, he just hurried over to me and shouted excitedly, Dad. I looked away, my expression cold. You said it yourself. Martin is your dad. Paul's face fell, and he stammered. That's not what I meant. Ava saw this and patted his head. Oh, come on. He's just a kid. You can't take what he says seriously. Kids say things they don't mean. You're his father. How can you hold a grudge against him? Her tone was dismissive, as if chiding an irresponsible parent. And what about Martin? I asked. The man you were so crazy about. The smile on Ava's face faltered, then faded. He's a total jerk. Not long after you left, he went back and married his first love. You were always the best one, so gentle and kind to me and our son. James, I know I was wrong. Can you forgive me? As she spoke, she held her purse out to me. It's so heavy. I just stared at her, motionless. Finally, she awkwardly drew her hand back. Get in the car. I'm taking you somewhere. Paul was instantly thrilled, pressing his face to the window as the scenery blurred past. This fictional world wasn't all that different from reality. He asked, "Dad, are we going to your house here? Is it as big as Grandpa's mansion? Did you set up a room for me, full of Iron Man stuff, like you did when I was little?" Paul pulled his head back from the window, his face flushed with excitement as he looked up at me. Ava stroked his hair and shot me a look. "Of course he did. You're his only child. He loves you more than anything." That hopeful look in Paul's eyes took me back. I had once personally decorated a room for him, filling it with Iron Man figures and models. It was his favorite. He had been so happy, throwing his arms around my neck and saying in his little kid voice, "You're the best, Daddy." "Thank you." But one day, he came home and ordered the housekeeper to pack all the toys away. When I asked him why, he gave me a look of contempt. "Grandpa says only useless men waste their time with fantasy heroes. A real man is his own hero. He builds his own world." After that, his room was filled with expensive paintings and sculptures. Not a single toy was in sight. He once dangled a set of car keys in my face. "Grandpa says I get to drive this car when I'm 18. But you, Dad? You could never afford it. That's why you buy me all this cheap junk, trying to get me to like you." Remembering that, I looked away, out at the passing street. "No," I said coldly. "Why would I get you that junk? You think that cheap stuff is good enough for my son?" Paul stared at me, stunned, as if he'd completely forgotten he was the one who had said those things. Ava kept her head down, silent. The rest of the drive was eerily quiet. When we pulled up to the hospital, they both looked at me, confused. "Are we going to your house?" Ava asked. I started walking toward the entrance. "My wife and daughter are in here. This is my home." The color drained from Ava's face. She grabbed Paul and rushed after me. "James, stop joking like that. Are you trying to give me a heart attack? I can apologize, but don't say things like that. I'm your wife, and Paul is your only child." "What do you mean, daughter?" It wasn't a joke, as she was about to see for herself. Hannah was standing there, poised and graceful. She completely ignored Ava's hostile glare, offered a gentle smile, and extended her hand. "Thank you," she said softly, "for taking care of James while he was in the real world." Ava was an heiress, coddled her entire life. She couldn't stand anyone taking what she considered hers, even if she had been the one to discard it. She gritted her teeth and tried to lunge at Hannah, but I stepped in her way. She froze for a second, then spun around and shoved Paul violently. "This is all your fault. You're the one who drove your father away. Are you happy now?" Paul stumbled and fell, looking up at his mother in bewilderment. "But you're the one who taught me to say those things. Grandpa said them too. Why is it my fault?" He had no idea why she was suddenly turning on him. Ava yanked him to his feet. "What are you talking about? I never taught you that. You were just being a brat, and you got what you deserved," she shrieked. "Now go apologize to your father and beg him to forgive you." Paul was just a kid, and the collar of his shirt was stretched out of shape. I stepped between them. "That's enough, Ava. You never valued what you had, and now you're putting all the blame on a child? He learned how to treat me from watching you." Hannah couldn't stand seeing the boy on the floor. She knelt and gently helped him up, but Paul turned his fury on her. "Get away from me, you witch. You stole my dad. You're an evil homewrecker." Such foul language from a little kid. I glanced at Ava and saw she was actually giving Paul an encouraging look. I would not let him get away with insulting Hannah to her face. I looked down at him, my voice filled with stern disappointment. "What has your mother been teaching you? Is that how a child should speak? I have no control over how you're raised over there, but as long as you're in front of me, you will not use that language again." Paul lowered his head. I went to Hannah's side, wrapping my arm around her waist to comfort her. "It's okay," I mouthed. Seeing our silent, intimate connection, Ava looked like she was about to lose her mind. She raised her hand and lunged at Hannah. I grabbed her wrist instantly. "Don't you dare touch her." The commotion woke our daughter. Rubbing her eyes, she asked, "Who are you? Why are you being mean to my mommy?" It was only then that Ava noticed the small child in the hospital bed. Her hand fell limply to her side, as if all the energy had been sucked out of her. After a moment of stunned silence, she said in a defeated voice, You even have a daughter." Seeing my new life should have been enough for her to give up. But for her, it seemed to have turned into a twisted game a relentless chase to back me into a corner. She said, "James, you love me so much. You can't just be over it. You must be doing this to get back at me for how I treated you, right? That's fine. I can wait for you to finish your little revenge plot." At the hospital entrance, she took Paul's hand and turned to leave, though Paul kept looking back, reluctant to go. I rubbed my temples, my head throbbing with frustration. If they won't leave, what about my daughter's cure? The system's voice suddenly echoed in my mind. Well, it looks like this mission won't be any easier than the last one. I shot back, "System, after all this time, you got any bright ideas for me?" It sighed. "Honestly, our entire department fails to comprehend the complexity of human emotions. You don't appreciate what you have, but once it's gone, you fight desperately to get it back. What's the point? I'd like to know what she wants to," I muttered. "Then go ask her," it retorted. Then it added, "or you could just have them both. Problem solved, right?" This damn system was completely useless. "Get lost," I snapped. It gave a nervous chuckle. "Just a joke. I'm actually here to remind you. Your daughter is running out of time. Good luck, Mr. Fictional Character." A wave of anxiety washed over me. Eva's doctor had been very clear. I couldn't pin all my hopes on Ava and Paul. Eva's condition was critical, but if we could find a suitable bone marrow donor in time, the surgery still had a chance of success. So I started running between hospitals, pulling every string I could. I contacted every charitable donor registry I could find and even donated $5 million to a local children's foundation. I was hoping that maybe, just maybe, some good karma would bring us a miracle. In moments like this, I realized being a supporting character wasn't all bad. In that other world, I was a nobody. But here, I was a tycoon with limitless assets and more money than I could ever spend. One day, the hospital called to say they might have found a potential donor. As I was about to leave, Paul suddenly appeared, timidly tugging on my jacket. "Dad," he whispered, "it's been 3 days. Why haven't you come to find me and Mom?" In that instant, I understood why I'd felt like I was being followed for the past few days. Ava hadn't changed a bit. She was selfish to the bone, never considering anyone but herself, not even her own son. On a sweltering day, she sat in an air-conditioned room waiting for me, while sending a child not yet 10 years old out to do her dirty work. I sighed, looking at the sweat beading on Paul's forehead. "I have to go somewhere. You want to come with me?" He immediately broke into a grin, nodded eagerly, and scrambled into the car. I buckled him into the back seat before getting behind the wheel. During the drive, Paul curiously explored the car. "Dad, your car is so cool. Grandpa ordered his new one 3 years ago, and it's still not here. You must be pretty powerful, right?" I didn't respond, and the car went quiet. Paul seemed to realize his mistake and mumbled, "Sorry." I kept my hands steady on the wheel. "I'm not the one you need to apologize to." He stammered, then, "I'll apologize to that lady next time." He was still my son after all. Maybe he wasn't a lost cause yet. I just hoped he could have a decent life when he went back. By the time we arrived at the potential donor's house, the situation had changed. The young woman who had agreed to donate had backed out. She was shoving the registry volunteers out her door, screaming, "You can't force me." A volunteer outside tried to reason with her. "Ma'am, no one is forcing you. You signed a consent form. We're just here for a follow-up." But the woman inside was hysterical and had already called the police. The crowd scattered as soon as the police arrived. Seeing another dead end, Paul stared and asked, "What's happening?" I told him, "A young woman wanted to do something good, but she got scared at the last minute." "Is she allowed to do that?" he asked. I nodded. "Of course. No one has the right to force someone to do something they don't want to do." Paul looked down at his feet. "So, does that mean, Mom, and I don't have the right to force you to come back with us?" I just patted his head without saying anything more. Even though we didn't find a match, the trip wasn't a total waste. On the drive back, Paul kept glancing at his expensive smartwatch, his expression growing increasingly anxious. He asked me to slow down. "Dad, I'm feeling a little carsick. Can you drive slower?" He never got carsick as a kid, but I eased off the accelerator anyway. I asked for his address to take him home, but he hesitated, refusing to tell me. "I'm hungry," he said instead. "Can we get something to eat first?" After we ate, he asked if he could see my house. Thinking of Eva in the hospital, My patience finally ran out. Paul, you need to go back to your mother. My daughter is waiting for me. I can't spend all my time with you. He looked up sharply, his eyes welling with tears. But you're my dad too. Why can't you be with me? I shook my head. No, you said it yourself. You wanted Martin to be your father. I was just a kid. I didn't know what I was saying. How could I explain this to him? I looked at him seriously. Age is never an excuse. Didn't your grandfather teach you to be a real man? A real man takes responsibility for what he says. He was so much like Ava. I insisted on taking him home. Just then, my phone rang. It was Hannah. James, get back here, quick. Before she could finish, I heard Ava scream on the other end, "You bitch! How dare you call for help?" The line went dead. Hearing the commotion, I didn't have time to think. I spun the car around and floored it toward the hospital. Paul grabbed my leg, refusing to let go. "Stay with me," he pleaded. I picked him up, tossed him back into his seat, and slammed on the accelerator. "Paul," I said, my voice cold, "I am so disappointed in you." A kid his age might not understand the weight of those words, but he instinctively tried to explain. "Mom made me do it. She said she had business at the hospital and that I had to stall you. After you left, all she did was go on dates. When that guy got married, she started drinking all the time. And when she drinks, she says she misses you. When I couldn't see you, she'd blame me, say it was my fault. Nobody loves me, only Grandpa does. She said if I helped her trick you into coming back, she'd love me again. I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted my dad back." I slammed my fist on the steering wheel, pushing the car to its limit. "Ava, you are a real piece of work." In the hospital room, Ava and a group of thugs had Hannah pinned to the bed. My wife, always so gentle and composed, had her hair torn in angry red slap marks across her face. Eva was screaming in terror. Her forehead had been ripped out, and blood was smeared across the sheets. Hannah was fighting desperately, trying to get to our daughter. Doctors and nurses were crowded outside, blocked by a few large bodyguards. Ava was screaming hysterically, "James is mine. Who the hell do you think you are? Take your sick little bastard and get out of here before I kill you. You're nothing but a home-wrecking bitch." Then she ordered her men to tear at Hannah's clothes. "You're so good at seducing men, right? Let's show everyone what a slut you are." I shoved my way through the bodyguards and burst into the room. I saw it the second I stepped through the door. I kicked the hand that was groping Hannah away, and then, not satisfied, I stomped on it until I heard the crack of bone. The medical staff rushed in during the chaos and moved Eva to another room. I took off my jacket and wrapped it around Hannah, who was trembling, pulling her into a tight embrace. Ava saw me arrive without a flicker of fear. She just glared back at Paul. "Useless." I said, "That's enough, Ava. You've gone way too far." She sneered. "So what? My father arranged for these men. Didn't you know? His business operations are already all over this place. Your pathetic little bodyguards are nothing. So, James, you can forget about ever getting rid of me. What do you possibly have to fight me with? How will you ever escape me?" Since the two worlds had opened up, cross-dimensional trade was just beginning. I'd had a stream of people giving me their cards, saying some tycoon from the other side wanted to get a piece of the action here. But you can't beat someone on their home turf, and since most of the major industries here were under my name, they all wanted to meet me. I've always kept a low profile, so very few people knew who I really was. And with Eva sick, I was in no mood to entertain them, so I turned them all down. It turned out that tycoon was her father. I pulled out my phone and made a call. The person on the other end agreed immediately. Less than half an hour later, a man arrived. Ava's face lit up. "Mr. Harris, why did you come yourself? I said you only needed to send a few men. You didn't have to come in person." She shot me a smug look. "You see, Mr. Harris is a major player here. You might have some money, but you can't compete with my family. You should just come back home with me." I already said I was sorry, but Mr. Harris was already breaking out in a cold sweat. He asked cautiously, "Sir, the incident you mentioned, was it this one? The assault on your wife and daughter?" Ava looked at him, confused. "What if it is?" "Mr. Harris, what are you talking about?" When he revealed my true identity, Ava froze. Mr. Harris looked like he was about to cry. "Miss, you're going to be the death of me. This Mr. Harris was merely a senior manager for the Sterling family. I truly couldn't understand how an heiress like Ava, who'd grown up around power, could be so incredibly short-sighted. I asked him, "Does your father still intend to do business here?" After making sure Hannah was okay, I slowly approached Ava. She had instantly dropped her arrogant demeanor, replacing it with that pitiful expression that used to melt my heart. "You've changed," she whimpered. "You would never have treated me like this before." Looking at her now, I just felt sick. I tapped my watch. "You have 20 minutes. For every mark on her, you're going to give one to yourself." "I don't hit women." "You do it." Ava shrieked. "Are you insane? You'd really do that to me?" I ignored her and went back to Hannah, gently tucking a stray strand of her hair behind her ear. I was about to force Ava's hand when Hannah's slender fingers gently touched my lips. Her face was still pale and her eyes were wide with shock, but she shook her head, silently asking me to stop. In the original novel, Hannah's character was a spoiled, villainous rival. She was supposed to be cruel and malicious. But the woman before me was showing mercy to the person who had just assaulted her. Or maybe I wasn't. Hannah said, "Get the boy out of here first. The blood on the floor is too much for a child to see." She nodded her chin slightly toward Paul, who was still frozen in place. I smiled. Hannah was no wilting flower. She wasn't cruel, but she was no saint either. As my wife and the eldest daughter of the Underwood family, she was not someone to be trifled with. But in front of child, she chose to let another mother save face. "So, Ava, how could you ever compare to a woman like Hannah?" Paul was led out of the room. "All right," I said. "You can begin." Seeing from my expression that I wasn't joking, Ava clenched her jaw but didn't dare to refuse. The only reason Martin had left her to marry someone else was because the Harrison family business had collapsed. She knew better than anyone how crucial this new cross-dimensional venture was for her father. Hannah and I watched, our expressions impassive, as she began to slap her own face. Finally, she reached a trembling, humiliated hand to the buttons of her blouse. Hannah quietly squeezed my hand. I gave her a slight nod. "That's enough," I said. I turned to Ava, my voice devoid of any warmth. "We're done. We're even. Take your son and go back where you came from." Ava left without another word. She finally understood I was no longer the man she could summon and dismiss at her whim. The system's voice piped up in my head again. "Well, Mr. Fictional Character, I never expected you to be such a big deal." "You flatter me," I replied dryly. "When we first linked up, I knew your character was rich, but I had no idea you were at this level." I felt a little awkward. "Well, back then I was too busy chasing after Ava to pay any attention to the family business. After Ava left with Paul, the system kept its promise. Eva made a full recovery. She could run and play just like any other kid, and she finally got to go to the preschool she'd been dreaming about. The system said, well, mission accomplished, Mr. Fictional Character. It's time for me to bow out again. Until we meet again. If I had a choice, I'd rather we never did. Every one of its appearances heralded some new, life-altering disaster. The system protested weakly. "Hey, you really don't want to see me again?" My real worry was that with the worlds now connected, they could come back and threaten my family. But the system was firm. They won't. The mission is over. If they ever show up again, it will be as characters in a new story. And the choice of how to react will be yours. That put my mind at ease. Once things settled down, I intentionally let a few rumors slip. Sure enough, old Mr. Harrison, Ava's father, came sniffing around. But to his credit, he was a man of his word. He never allowed that mother and son to appear in my life again. Sometimes Eva would ask, "What about that other brother?" Hannah would always answer for her, "He and his mommy are living happily, sweetie." Whether they were actually happy or not was another question entirely. On a rare day off, Hannah and I took Eva to Six Flags for the entire day. She'd never had a chance to do something like this before, so we made sure to go on every single ride she was big enough for. She also developed a sudden obsession with collecting souvenir pins, buying a whole bag of them. On the ride home, she was so tired she could barely keep her eyes open, but she stubbornly clutched her cotton candy, refusing to fall asleep on my shoulder. As the car stopped at our gate, Waiting for the butler to open it, Eva suddenly spotted a small figure crouching outside. "It's that brother," she yelled. Blood ties are a strange thing. Eva had a natural affinity for Paul. I sighed, wondering what new trouble this was. But I knew old Mr. Harrison would never let his only grandson wander around unsupervised. I told the driver, "Just drive in. Ignore him." Hannah shot me a look and got out of the car. I knew she had a soft spot for kids in trouble. All I could do was try to manage the situation. Paul entered the house, his eyes wide as he took everything in. "This is even bigger than Grandpa's mansion," he whispered. When I saw him sneak his phone out to take a picture, I said coldly, "If you even think about sending that to your mother, I will throw you out of this house myself." Paul immediately deflated. Hannah led him to the sofa and asked a maid to prepare the guest room. She gently wiped the sweat from his face with a warm cloth. "You haven't eaten, have you? I'll make you some soup. It's Eva's favorite. You could try it. After you eat, you could take a shower and get some sleep. Tomorrow, your father will take you home." Hearing this, the previously quiet Paul's expression soured. "This is my dad's house. Why do I have to leave?" He shoved her hand away, and the towel fell to the floor. Hannah said nothing. She simply bent down, picked up the towel, and went to the kitchen. I sat down next to Paul. "That's the second time you've been disrespectful to her," I said, my voice firm. "If there's a third time, you're out." This mansion was a wedding gift from Hannah's father. Technically, it was her house. Paul picked up the bowl of hot soup and muttered between spoonfuls, "Why couldn't I have a mom like this?" Neither Hannah nor I looked back, leaving him in the care of the staff. Seeing his tear-filled eyes, Eva wiggled out of my arms and pushed her cotton candy into his hand. "Here, brother. It's sweet." Hannah said that while my past bothered her, the child was innocent. "He's still your son. Just take him home tomorrow." Then her tone shifted, and she added through clenched teeth, "But you had better sort this mess out for good, or you'll be sleeping on the couch." I quickly agreed. The next day, Hannah stood in the doorway holding Eva, watching us leave. "Sweetie," she said softly, "say goodbye to your brother." Eva waved her little hand. Paul, as if making a great decision, ran up and pressed something into her palm. Eva pouted, completely unimpressed. "It's a pin, but I like princess pins. This skull is scary." Hannah chuckled and patted her on the head. He'd chosen the wrong gift, so the gesture was lost. Paul hung his head, dejected, and quickly climbed into the car. He was silent the entire drive, right up until I dropped him off with his mother. It was for the best. It would help him understand that we simply didn't belong in the same world. A flash of delight crossed Ava's face when she saw me get out of the car with Paul. "My father is here on business, so I just tagged along. I didn't come here specifically for..." I cut her off with a nod. "It doesn't matter. Just don't bother my family again." Without her usual arrogance, Ava's voice was cautious. She asked me to come inside for a minute. I hesitated, then agreed. It was better to clear the air once and for all. Besides, I couldn't face Hannah's wrath if I didn't, and the couch was not comfortable. But there was no way I was going into her apartment. I told her to leave Paul with her staff, and we could talk in the park across the street. The park wasn't empty. A young couple was arguing nearby, the boy desperately trying to placate his girlfriend. Ava let out a soft laugh. "You used to be that devoted to me," she said quietly. I nodded, my face a mask. "That's right. When Martin left you for that other woman, I would drop everything to come get you, even in the middle of the night. But you'd be drunk, refuse to leave with me, and call me useless. Whenever you were upset, I was the first person you'd call. But the second Martin so much as glanced your way, you'd drop me a heartbeat. Remember that time I was delivering some files to Martin for you and got into a car accident? I was in the hospital with a broken leg. You showed up and screamed at me for jeopardizing Martin's career. The doctor told you a piece of rebar nearly pierced my heart. And what did you say? You said, "But you didn't die, did you?" Later, when we had a child, you taught my own son to call another man dad. You don't need to remind me. I remember every last detail. Seeing her face go white, I gave a small, cold smile. "Anything else you wanted to say?" Ava shook her head violently, her voice trembling. "I am sorry. I just always thought you'd wait for me. I thought no matter what I did, you'd always be there to catch me if I turned around. I couldn't accept that you really didn't want me." That's why I did those extreme things. I'm so sorry. I am truly sorry. I listened silently as she finished. She looked up at me, her face ashen. Is there really no chance for us? I let out a cold laugh. You came back here with a son named Paul Harrison. Do you have any idea how humiliating that name is for me? And you never once considered changing it. Ava, the only thing you've ever been in love with is power. You claimed you preferred the tragic supporting character over the hero, but did you ever once act like it? We were over a long time ago. No one waits forever. The supporting character and the heroine are not the answer. Take your son and go live your life. Try to keep some dignity for yourself. With that, I turned and walked away without a backward glance. A wave of relief washed over me. My back was safe. I was definitely not sleeping on the couch tonight. Paul tried to see me one more time after that, but Ava dragged him away. After that, our lives finally returned to normal. The connection between the two worlds grew, and so did my business ventures. I didn't see them again for many years. It was at Eva's 18th birthday party. My business partner, Mr. Carter, had remarried after his first wife's death. His new bride was Ava. They attended as Mr. Carter's guests. Ava looked much older, trailing timidly behind her husband. Hannah and I greeted them politely. Paul was there too, except he was no longer Paul Harrison. He was Paul Carter now. Honestly, I found it laughable. The family name Ava had once wielded with such pride was now utterly worthless. Paul, now taller than me, gave me a brief nod. Eva, looking like a princess, was surrounded by her friends as she cut her birthday cake. I saw a flash of envy in his eyes. Mr. Carter couldn't hold his liquor. Halfway through the night, he was practically draped over Eva. He slung an arm around her, slurring to me, "You know, Mr. Sterling, her father went bankrupt owing to the fortune. Couldn't pay. So he gave her to me instead. She's just a trophy to me. Her father's dead. She's got a kid. Where's she gonna go without me? Huh. She got lucky my first wife died. Otherwise, she'd have been nothing more than my mistress." I took a polite sip of my drink and then excused myself. I needed to find Eva and remind her to be very, very careful about the man she chose. Hannah and Eva were out on the balcony. When Eva saw me, she held something up. "A boy gave this to me," she said, "but I think I'm too old for this kind of thing." It was a small, princess-themed thing. I smiled. "You don't like it?" She shook her head. "It's too childish. I don't want it." Hannah and I shared a look. "If you don't like it, you don't have to accept it," Hannah said. "You get to choose what you want. You're the best one." A single, small pin was left abandoned on the balcony. The timing was wrong. Some things, once broken, can never be truly made. After the party, Ava and Paul half-carried a drunken Mr. Carter away. Ava whispered quiet goodbye. Her back was stooped, the whether from the weight of her husband or the weight of her life. It was impossible to tell. Paul straightened his shoulders, a flicker of hope in his eyes as he looked at me. I just shook my head. There's no need for goodbyes. I closed the door and didn't look back. The core of this story is an exploration of self. Do you want to be a tool for someone else's fantasy or a treasure chest for you? Ava loved the symbol. Hannah loved the real person. That belated pin serves as a warning. Once the moment is past, even the most sincere apology is futile. So, become the protagonist of your own life. Love the person who truly sees you. Because the best ending isn't rewriting someone else's script, but finally writing your own.